This past weekend, the one and only Chris Rock came back to the stage, dropping his newest special, Selective Outrage. Now, I had seen him perform at Radio City. I had seen some of his material before, so I was really interested in how he was going to do it for the special. What I did notice was some of the stuff that was at the end of the live show got pushed to the front. So I guess a lot of that other stuff was probably older material he was doing. And he was slowly bringing that newer material to the forefront. I was always under the impression that Chris Rock was considered funny to people. One thing I learned is people don't think Chris Rock is funny anymore. It's weird. It's weird. Ever since the Oscars, it's almost like people don't find Chris Rock funny. I think the G.I. Jane joke, while weak, has now, I guess, diminished his legacy. Who knew that a spot at the Oscars could diminish one's legacy? I mean, to be fair, look at the guy who directed The Artist. Have you heard from him since? No, you haven't. Sometimes the Oscar can be an albatross. That's a big word for a Latino. Chris Rock, of course, addressed the Oscars. Many people said a year later. Yes, a year later. Maybe you don't know how specials are put together, but it takes about a year to develop an hour. And that's what he was doing all this time. It's kind of his prerogative to wait how long he wants to wait. Take his time to deal with his trauma. Because it's kind of interesting how we always say, hey, you can't tell anyone how to deal with their trauma until someone deals with the trauma the way you don't like it. Now it's wrong. Did he call her a bitch? Yes, he did. Now, I probably wouldn't have done that. Which is a very powerful term. You can't just be calling women that willy-nilly. But once again, that's his trauma, not mine. Would I have set my special in her home city of Baltimore? People ask why didn't he do it in Philly? Well, because if you watch the special, he kind of alludes to why. He thinks Will is not really at fault for that slap, and I kind of talked about that in 39.5 of this episode, this series. We talked about how maybe in that moment, Will's not necessarily reacting as the Will Smith we know, more as a man responding to the stress that he's been going through with the entanglement stuff. But that is something that has now defined his legacy, and it will come up in future generations. It's probably, out of all his movies, it's probably the most watched thing he's ever done. That's the sad part. That slap was watched more times than Independence Day, or Men in Black, or Wild Wild West. But Chris is allowed, I feel, to voice how he fucking feels about it. It's his special. I didn't know there was a time limit in which you can talk about shit that happens to you. I thought lived experience was a thing. Ricky Martin never attacked Chris Rock for the VMA jokes. But then again, I don't think Ricky Martin could fight. And I'm fine. Here's the thing. I would be more fine with the critique if people were saying, hey, I used to like Chris Rock, now I don't. That's respectable to me. Because you're acknowledging, hey, there was a step too far for me. Listen, there are plenty of things I like or I used to like, that I no longer like now. It's called growth. For instance, I used to like Jada Pinkett Smith. Then I found out she was a predator. I no longer like Jada Pinkett Smith. Growth. Here I am acknowledging I used to like this, but then I found out something about it and now I don't like it anymore. See how easy that could be. Commentary, because a Talking Funny clip came out again where Louis C.K. is saying the N-word and then Chris Rock kind of gives him a pass to say it. But then that kind of became that Chris is a sellout and only does comedy for racist white people. Which, to me, if Chris Rock is doing comedy for racist white people and they like it, then that means a racist white person liked Chris Rock, a black man's performance. So, if anything, Chris Rock kind of solved racism. He's a hero, and he should be treated as such.